let's learn what we're going to go through with the online software. And our main focus for today is going to be focusing on the tax return flow of our online software. So we're going to do just a very brief intro of our online software, getting in with your login. We're going to be covering the methods of preparing a tax return. I'm going to show you a little bit of our forms-based method. And then we also have a new exciting guided estimator mode for our tax return flow as well. But then, of course, all of our tax return methods are going to finish with two main steps, and that is verification and transmitting of a tax return. So that's going to be the flow today. The main focus, great for your preparers to be listening in for today. So we're going to go ahead and toggle into our software. I'm going to spend majority of our time there would be going through our online application. So as you see, it's fully web-based. We're going to be going to either crosslinkonline.com. That is the URL for the tax software. It's a question I've gotten a lot the last 2 weeks, so just want to make that clear. All tax preparation would be for the online software at that URL. When we do log in, we are going to log in with login credentials you would have been provided by your office manager. And we do have two-step verification. I know it's something we do go over every webinar here, but we did have a change, a new implementation to it, where we do have to authenticate every time we log in. So that may be something, if you're new to CrossLink, then it's just brand new, it's part of your methodology. Or if you've been using online for the last few seasons, we used to be able to register your device. But it is ramping up security, making sure all your data is secure. That's our top priority. So you have two main methods, either the authentication app, which I definitely recommend. It's Google Authenticator. You can either have it as an extension, as you see, part of your Chrome browser, or you can get your verification code sent to your email. So I want to go ahead and look for my verification code. We're just going to click on it, and I'm going to hit continue. Copy and paste it, and here we go. So when we log in, we are now at what's called our preparer dashboard. So my main focus today is the tax return and what that preparer sees when they log in. So as you see, their dashboard here on the left-hand side just has dashboard and tax returns. Their main focus is always seeing their tax returns and seeing the statuses that we have. So we have four main statuses of your tax return, and that could be your total tax returns, accepted, rejected, and extensions. So they can easily see what tax returns they need to pay attention to as the season moves on and progresses for the next few months. When we want to start a tax return, you're simply always going to click on the side navigation panel over here where it says tax returns, and then you're going to see your whole list, add all your returns here. So you can easily see your most recently viewed tax returns or the ones you just started. But you're going to see two buttons on the top right corner, and that's where you're going to click on New Return. When we click on New Return, you're going to enter in your social, or your taxpayer social, I should say. And we do have to confirm your entry, so it's just asking for those numbers twice. But you're going to see we have three buttons here, and I'm going to explain what each one is, and we'll see definitely both methods of these returns. So on your far left, you're going to see the W-7 form. That is for a taxpayer who doesn't have a social security number. They have an ITIN. So if you just want to start that tax return right away, you can definitely just click the W-7 form, and it's going to build that type of return for you. Our other two buttons are our two main methods for doing a return. You have Create Guided Estimator Return, and this method, it might be good for very beginning preparers, somebody who may just be starting out to the software. There where you can be guided through the tax return, you kind of get all of the data entry done in these different sections, and then you add your forms and you finish the tax return. So I'm definitely going to show that one. That we had a second method we go over today, but I'm going to focus now on the regular return, which is what we call forms-based. It's our legacy method, where we're going to start off with your client intake form, and we add the forms for your taxpayer. So you can choose your method, but today we're going to start with creating a regular return. We're going to click that button, and it's now going to open up the tax return. And within this flow, we have our client data screen. So that's going to be the active window, the form we're actively going to be working in. And then on the left-hand side, we're going to have our attached forms list here. So you can take a look here. I just mentioned this is going to be our client data screen. We're going to gather a bulk of the taxpayer information. And then on the left-hand side, just a little bit navigation of our return, you're going to see the refund amount and the AGI start to build as we add our forms and our income on the return. And then you have two main sections throughout here. You have general, where there are either worksheets or tools that we provide with the software to help you manage your tax return for your taxpayer, such as an invoice or a document archive, signature. So we're going to get to those through when we wrap up the return, but just take a note there underneath the general section. And then we have federal. Federal is going to see where you add all of your taxpayers' forms. And then, of course, if we add a state return, the state package would be right below that. We always add the 1040 and the 8879 for every tax return that is added. Those forms by default will automatically generate for you. Okay. On the top left corner, we have what I call function buttons. We have notes. This is where you can leave a note for yourself for your, practice preparing the return, whether you're waiting on documents or you need to check the direct deposit information. You can leave your own notes on how you're progressing through the tax return. We have signatures, again, gathering signatures for your taxpayer. We do have interview mode. That is another guided approach for doing a tax return here, where you can see some icons and it builds the tax return for you. So again, I'll briefly mention those methods later on. And then we have verify. That's going to show you all your errors throughout the tax return. Transmit. That's when we finalize a whole return and we're going to send it off through the IRS and to the bank. So that's how you're actually sending this tax return to either the IRS or through the bank. We have print, where you can print your tax return, get your acknowledgement letters, and then, of course, payments. These function buttons, what I really like about them, you're going to see that we're actually going to use every single one of them, most of them, except for interview, to finalize your tax return. So as you pay attention, when we wrap up this return, these function buttons here are actually going to be our last few stages of our flow that I'm going to go over today. So I kind of like that they're right there at the top, so they're aware for you and your preparers. And then, of course, we have save and a down arrow. The down arrow can allow you to where you can send text messages and you can exit the tax return. So that might be something new you may not see right away when you enter the return, but this is where you'll be able to save and close that tax return and close out of it. Okay, so now that I kind of showed where my mouse may be clicking to get to different areas throughout the return, let's go ahead and fill out some taxpayer information here. So as you see, our cursor is always going to start off with the DOB. That's the date of birth here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in some information real quick. And you may ask, how am I moving between my fields here? I am going ahead and I am clicking tab or enter throughout my return. And I'm just moving between my fields. Now you may notice on some fields, we do have dynamic databases. So between these dynamic databases, whenever you see at the bottom of my screen here, it is saying I can click on Alt-C. And when I do that, it loads a database. So we will have several databases between different fields, state fields, W-2 fields, business codes on your Schedule C. We will have several different databases that we have preloaded data in there for you. We will also save data as you enter it in for the first time for your office, such as bank routing numbers, EIN numbers, zip codes. Those numbers are always going to save once you enter them in for the first time on a tax return. Now, as I'm entering in, I entered in a cell phone number, entering an email address. Really train your preparers, and if you're listening, to gather this information right away from your taxpayer, because we have some amazing paperless office capabilities where you can opt them in for text messaging here. I can mark that X that my taxpayer would like to receive text messages, and I'm going to click agree. You do need to know their carrier, right? So this is another, again, database option. So I mentioned you can click Alt-C, but you can also click on the three dots and go to choices. And that's going to load in all of our providers for cell phone carriers. I can search at the top, choose my provider, click select, and it populated my domain. Okay, so that is how you can get to those options here. Again, just fill in what's necessary, put in some information. As you see, I kind of mistyped there for the state of Florida, and it caught in red right away that I misentered something. So we do have some checks and balances actually going in as you are providing the data entry for this tax return. Okay, you may see I'm on this little small field right after the expiration date for the driver's license. And I just want to pause there as we're moving through the return, and you may ask, what do I need to enter into this field? What is it looking for? Well, there are two main ways that you can know what a field is looking for and what you need to enter. The first way is I can hover my mouse into that field. So I'm not clicking on it, I'm just hovering. And you can see a little blurb up here on my screen that's telling me the different acronym, the letter acronym for the category. So D for driver's license. And I know that could be small for some people. We can definitely now click on what's called the info tooltip here. So that's the small I icon. And I can click on that. And now my field description is right here at the top, letting me know what that field is looking for. So I'm just going to leave that open as we finish up the client data screen so you can see how intuitive it is. And you can see some other items listed here on the field description. So now we're at filing status. So for today's return, I'll go ahead and do a 4 for head of household. I'm going to enter that in. And again, I knew that because I looked at my field description. It bypassed my spouse information because it's no longer needed. I just went straight to my address information here. And I'm going to actually go on my city here, and I can start typing in a zip code. And now it's populating my city, and it will populate, once I click enter on my fields, the state and the zip code. Okay, so to populate information from the database, when you're just allowing it to load like that, you need to click it and then click off the field so it knows that you chose that information. So that's how you can use that third method of populating data. If your taxpayer is going to provide a direct deposit account to receive their refund, whether it's from the IRS or from the bank, to get their refund method via direct deposit, you can go ahead and enter that information right here in the client data screen. Again, I clicked Alt-C, and I can now choose my bank routing number and now put in the account number for my taxpayer. Okay, so that is how we're entering in some direct deposit data here, and then you're marking the type of account. This small section is client referral. This is just a nice way to keep track of your marketing strategies. You can say, okay, how did you come into my office today? How did you hear about us? And if you want, you can keep track of that. So this way, during season or at the end of season, you can see which strategies really worked for you and for your business. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots, going to go to choices, and I'll check on flyers. They maybe bought in a flyer, and I can see, oh, where did you find my flyer? And I can say maybe the local civic center, right? And you can even add to that, maybe the address or something. But I can run reports on these areas, and I can see where that business drove in from. Talking about healthcare, one main question here. If your taxpayer purchased healthcare through the marketplace, you will double click the box. And as you see, when I click on the box underneath my form links, it already has the ACA questionnaire form linked for me here. I can click on it and it will add the form. I can also double click with my mouse. That is another way you can just mark a box with the X indicator. So just to select the box. Now, once I did that, it also added the questionnaire right for you on the client data screen. And then the third place you can find it is over here on the left-hand side under the general section. It added for you right here. Okay. So those are, once you mark that box, those are the 3 ways you can get to the questionnaire for healthcare. If that was a mistake, all you have to do is delete the X, click back, and it recalculated right away for you. And now you can move on with the return. When we're talking about dependents, we have 2 categories on your client intake form. We have your dependents that you're claiming, and then we also have non-dependents at the bottom, if you're trying to claim for EIC or anything else, it would be underneath there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a dependent here. You can see once I put in the my date of birth, I calculated the age, put in a zip code, asking for my relationship, I'll put in son, and then MO, right? If I look at the field description, months lived with the taxpayer, how many months did the dependent live with the taxpayer? I will put 12. Once I do that, it populated all of my codes for me. Now, if you wanted to review your codes or you needed to change one, you can by just clicking on the field. So this is my dependent codes, and if you wanted to see the list of them again, you can click on choices. I can go ahead and click on the E, and it's showing me my EIC code is eligible, student, disabled, kidnapped, or none. So if you needed to change to another, you can just put in the correct letter. And then my field description for the eligible child tax credit. It has a C or a D if it was for other dependent, or you leave it blank. But those codes will populate based on the data you've entered into the fields here. Okay, if I go ahead and I click now enter, I can add another dependent if I need to. Okay, see, I start typing daughter, I select it, and I click enter, and now my code's populated again. Very easy to add some dependents there. At the bottom of our screen, we have 2 questions for remote signature. Now, you may say I'm jumping ahead of the game here, but I'm just going with the flow on how you would fill out your tax return here. So you may say, okay, taxpayer, how do you want to sign your tax return? Are you going to come into my office? Or are they remote, maybe in another state, another city, or they just have a busy day and can't make it into your office? Well, we have a way for you to send remote signatures to your taxpayers. You can opt them in, and they can either get a text message or an email sent to them remotely. And these are one of those 2 questions that you need to answer. So A, does the taxpayer consent to receive and sign their documents remotely? You're going to see these boxes or yes, no questions. I'll mark a yes for demonstrating purposes. And then there is a charge for the remote signature. And that's just saying, do you want to charge the remote signature fee onto the invoice? And it automatically marks it as a Y. If you want it to be nice and not pass that charge off to the taxpayer, you can simply come in here and mark it a no. Okay, so that's how we go ahead and we do that there. Now we've wrapped up our client intake form here. We've entered in all your taxpayers' information, and a lot of this information is going to flow onto other forms. So now we're going to go ahead and click add a form, and we defaulted to our W-2. You can see here in this window, we have all of our federal forms listed on the federal tab. Okay, you can start typing in a number, and it's going to start bringing you into something here. Okay, so it's going to start trying to guess what you need to go to. If you're still learning our federal names and numbers for forms, I know there's plenty out there, but you maybe know what form you're looking for. The index tab is a really good one to get used to. You can start typing in a word, and it's going to go ahead and show you forms that are related to the word you're searching, like a keyword search. And I can now click on tuition if it's anything for a tuition type of statement here. If you're talking about states, we have a state tab, and then you would choose your state here, and then you would add the form in. Okay, I know we're going to get the question probably at the end, are states released yet? We will start slowly releasing states, but this is where you can at least get an idea of the form, and you can add them. Doesn't need to be released for you to add the form. You just can't transmit their state return until it's released. So you can definitely add your states and start working on the forms until we release them. So that is how you access any additional forms or get to your states by acting, and I'll demonstrate it again, by clicking on the add form button on the bottom left is where you can get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a W-2. I'm going to choose a database here. Populates my EIN information, put in some wages. And you can see that my calculations happened right away. As soon as I put in my wages, it calculated, and then as soon as I put in my tax withheld, it calculated again. I didn't click refresh, I didn't click save, I didn't click into anything else but enter in my data. And now you take a look at my federal refund is about $8,000, and my AGI is being listed for me as well. You take a look at the federal section here, it also added some forms for us. It added my EIC checklist and my credit form. It added my 8812 and also added my prepared due diligence. So the form will add some information based on the data you're entering, like your schedules 1, 2, and 3. If that information is needed, we're going to add those forms for you. What the program will not do, it will not add Schedule C. It will not add a tuition, or not add the 1099 or the 1098 form, because we don't know what your taxpayer has done for the season. So that is when you need to continue to click the Add Form button. And now you can go ahead and you can search for other forms and you can add it as such. And now it added a Schedule C to the tax return. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate it again. I'm going to click Add Form. I'm going to put in a 1099. And now you can see all the different 1099 forms we have. And now you can click one and click Add. Now you will fill out the forms that correlate with your taxpayer and enter in the data. That's how simple it is to add forms to our software here. When I talk about going through some forms here, we also have another way, and I know we may have some very seasoned preparers out there that have been doing taxes for a very long time. So they may just want to see some things off of the 1040 here. So when I click on my 1040, and anytime you want to click onto a form, you're just going to click through it on the left-hand side. You can scroll down, and you can see we have the virtual currency credit question right here, right after the address of the taxpayer. Okay, so this question I'm going to purposely leave blank because when I show verify, I want to show you how the software does make sure you answer the questions that is required of you. But I like to show as we scroll down to our line items here. Again, we can see that I have the 41,000 on our line 1 for income from the W-2. But if there's another way you would like to add your forms, you could work down to 1040 and you can simply see as I click through here, form links appear. So now I can click on the correlating form links that have or associate with this line item. Another way you can learn where these values go onto the 1040. Another thing to note here when you're looking at our software, the gray fields, these gray fields are calculated fields. They need to flow in from either another form or a worksheet. The light blue fields is where you're going to do your data entry, okay? And you see that all throughout the tax return. Okay, we populated the Smith abbreviation, but you can alter the last name on the light blue field, okay? So that is what you want to pay attention to as you're going throughout the tax return, where you're putting in your data. It works that way. I also get a question here for household employee. I get that question a lot for that credit, right? So we actually have that on 1B of our tax return here. So we actually see that worksheet popped up. So again, I mentioned you're not going to enter in the value here, right? That's a calculated field, but you can click on worksheet and you have several ways to do so. 3 dots and you can go to worksheet. When I click on the field, I can do Alt W and go to worksheet. Or if you have the info tooltip open, I can click on worksheet. Okay, now I will go ahead and I'm going to indicate, okay, this is for the taxpayer. And you're going to put in the household help employer and address, right? So just putting in some data here. And how much they were paid for that credit, okay? So that's how you simply, it's on the worksheet. Now I'll click back to parent form. And now when I click back to line 1B, that is calculated. So I just use that as an example as when you're looking for something and it's a calculated field and you're like, wow, where do I enter it? I know I shouldn't do it there. Well, click on the field and you're going to probably see a worksheet appear. or you'll see a form link appear. Okay, so that's how you're going to maneuver in and out of these different forms that correlate with these line items. When you're moving down below with the 1040, just to see, all of your information should be populated at the bottom here for your preparer info. For whatever reason, if it didn't populate, you guessed it, on the preparer's name, as long as everything was built into the office setup, you can click choices and that information is there for you and you can choose your PTIN. Okay, so as we wrapped up this tax return here, I want to pay attention to the 8879. This is our e-file signature authorization form. This is how you are deciding if your taxpayer is getting a refund directly from the IRS or from the bank. And if it is a bank product return, that is considered an RT. Some people call it a bank product, a BP, or bank, right? Loan through the bank, whatever you call it, it needs a number 5. That indicates right here in this red box on the very top, you are going to type in that 5. When you type in that 5 and you click enter, a bank application will add underneath the federal section. I cannot mimic it. I don't have anything enrolled with a bank, but I promise you 100% once you put that 5 in, the bank application will load for you there. And then you will fill that out on your taxpayer's behalf. And that's how you opt them in for any type of pre-act loan, cash advance, regular refund transfer. All of that is done on the bank application. Okay, but to indicate that, on 8879, again, it is a number 5. For anything other than that, you have either a check from the IRS or a direct deposit from the IRS. Okay, that would be a number 1 or a number 2. If this number here, the federal refund, was in red, that means they have a balance due. And then you guessed it, you're going to enter in a 4 for a balance due. And the software won't let you enter anything else but that 4. Okay, so this is where you first generate, again, that bank app and how your taxpayer is going to receive that refund is on your 8879. As you go through the rest of your forms here, and I'm just going to click through some, you have your prepare due diligence form. We do a really nice job of highlighting the questions that you do need to go through and read them and answer them with these red box indicators, okay? So it doesn't mean you have to answer it, yes, that's the answer. It just means, hey, you need to pay attention to this question. You need to answer this question. So you'll read through your due diligence questions, and then you're going to mark the ones or the correct answer for your taxpayer. Okay, and it breaks it down into all your different sections. A lot of questions, I guess I want to leave notes maybe on these forms where we do have a section here depending on what type of credit you're applying for, the documents and others. You can you could type in some notes. Okay, so this is your due diligence form, so you want to make sure you are filling those out and answering those questions correctly on behalf of your taxpayer. When we talk about verify, so if I'm going over our steps here, we have your client data screen where you entered in your taxpayer's information. We then click on add form, and we're adding in the taxpayer's forms they provided you. Then our next step would be to go through the verification system. The verification system is by using one of the function buttons at the top, and we click on verify button. When you click on verify, you're going to see a whole list of all the items that we need to enter in. We have point and shoot error correction here. So when I click on a line item here and I click on view and fix, it is bringing me exactly to the question that needs to be answered. Okay, so at any time, did the taxpayer receive or sell, exchange any type of virtual currency? You're going to mark yes or no. I'm going to double click with my mouse and I'm going to mark an X. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my next field here. Click view and fix. This one is popping up to make sure I will have my 8879 signed by my taxpayer. My 8879 is also coming up because I do not have a bank application and it read that. So I need to change my refund method for my taxpayer. So I'm going to do 1, check from IRS. And it's letting me know, hey, you're no longer, I'll show you, working with the bank. And it's giving me the warning to make sure I collect my preparation fees directly from the taxpayer. So we do have those warnings in there because the IRS will distribute the refund directly to the taxpayer. So you want to make sure you're getting paid. Click yes. I'm going to click back on verify. And we have some things through our EIC. We have our EIC checklist. I'll click view and fix. Okay, I'm going to read my question a little quickly here, and I'm going to go ahead and mark my questions, right? So view and fix, and it's just bouncing me throughout this. This is a question I get pretty frequently, right now, is when I'm opting in to get a check from the IRS. We do have to make sure we are direct depositing opt-out, a security thing, making sure you're doing exactly what your taxpayer wants you to do here and getting their refund the correct way. So that's why we do have that secondary question for you. And then you have your 8867, right? So I'm going through and I am going through my due diligence list. So I just wanted to show an example of how our verification works, how easy it is. It's bringing you to the line item where you need to answer or read the question and fill it out. So please make sure we're using verify, especially if you're a new preparer, add your forms. And then you see I added in my Schedule C, right? And then I'm like, oh, required field missing. Let me click on it. And let me see where I need to fill it. Okay, and it's bringing me to those options here. And I'll spend just a moment here on my Schedule C. And so we added the Schedule C through our Add Form button. You can give it a name here. Okay, we have our business codes, right? Again, let me close verify. We have our business codes. Guessed it. Let's click Alt-C and let's choose in. We actually separated them really nicely through these different categories. So it's a little easier to read when you're filtering throughout these things here. So you can go ahead and select what applies to your taxpayer for their business. Okay, so if I just go ahead and I'm just going to select one here, populates it there. You can give it a business name. And then you're going to go ahead and fill in your taxpayer's Schedule C, okay? Gross receipts and income. How much did they make with their business? Once I added that, if you take a look, I added now my Schedules 1, 2, and 3. Because now we have additional tax. Schedules 1 and 2, we have the adjustments schedule we need to go through and fill out, and it flows the line items everywhere. So go ahead, the verify is going to bring you through each of these errors and where you need to enter in your data. I get a big question, where do you list expenses for our business? That's on part 2. You see we have the different categories here, and you can go ahead and list in some information here. Okay, so your Schedule C has those incomes, and then we have cost of goods sold. And then at the bottom, if you need to leave any other expenses, you can list that on part 5. So we do have your Schedule C fully filled out here, pretty self-explanatory when you're filling in different areas. And if you have any assets in which you need to depreciate for your taxpayer, you can click on the depreciation button right underneath general. That's going to show you there. And then you can go ahead and click on it, and it's going to build your asset table for you. Okay. So sorry about that. I clicked the refresh button, but let me get back into my return here. And as I open back into my return, I think it's a really good segue for me to now show you some features when you're wrapping up your return. So when we do open up a tax return here, we're going to go ahead and see a summary shortcut page. So for example, I was working on the Schedule C. I can click go, and it's going to load into the Schedule C. Or if I wanted to go ahead and click on the 8812, it can do that there. Or if you just want to open up to the client data screen, I can click on continue. Okay, so that's what the premise is for that summary shortcut page is there for you guys. And then wrapping up the few stages here, we went through adding your forms, and you add in your taxpayer's forms. We went through the verification step where you're going to see all the errors on your tax return. And then we also showed the 8079, which is where you declare how your taxpayer is receiving their refund. And then your last few steps would be signing, printing, and transmitting. Now, I just want to show a few things that you could really take advantage of. Is make sure you're loading documents within your document archive here. So that's loaded onto your document archive. So that's where you can load your taxpayers documents or request documents. As you finish the return, the tax summary page is a good one to get a hold of or just take a look at because it's going to show you a breakdown of all of the different credits that your taxpayer could be receiving. So that's under tax summary, okay? So this tax return, we built a lot into it. So I can't show you the final stages because I do have errors in my tax return. So as you see here, I can't move on to my next stages because I haven't gotten that successful message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And I'm going to switch into a completed return I have done here. With this tax return here, I was able to do a few things for you guys. So as you see, same premises, there was a head of household return. I added a W-2 onto it. And we have our EIC and a prepare checklist here. So pretty basic return. When I click on verify, I have verify successful. So that means I'm ready to move on to my next few stages here. Great, click OK. Your next stage could be gathering signatures from your taxpayer. And you may want to give them a warning that you're going to send them a text message. You know, opting them in, right? We opt them in at the very bottom that they're going to sign remotely. So I can actually text my taxpayer by hitting the down arrow and hit send text message. And then I can say, I'm going to send remote sign request, just to give them a head up. Click send. Click OK. And you can actually see when your taxpayer responds to you as well. If I click on the down arrow and go to receive text messages, you can see that I have a message from my taxpayer that says, great, thank you. So now you have a whole dialogue there between you and your taxpayer within the tax return. When we're going to get a signature, you can click on two methods. You can click on signatures or signatures at the top. When I click on it here, it's going to list everyone who needs to sign. Now it's great because I only see the taxpayer. That means my ERO did their signature and I did my signature as the preparer. And that's all done within the office setup or when I first sign in. So really make sure you are getting your signatures done. So this way you're only worrying about your taxpayer. Now when I click sign, I'm going to get a little dialog box here. And it's going to, again, bring me through verify. And we have two methods. Capture signature means they are physically next to me in my vicinity here. They're in my office. And they are going to sign electronically either using my computer mouse, on-screen signature, so if your device is touchscreen, or a signature pad. Those are the three methods that you can sign electronically right here next to me and populate it on the tax return. If they are not next to me, or I just want to send them a remote signature, I'm going to choose on a down arrow and click remote signature. I can now choose text message or email to send that secure link to my taxpayer and have them sign. So I'll go ahead and choose email and I'll click send. Now that message has been sent to my taxpayer for them to sign their tax return. My status is now showing pending. And if I take a look at my document archive real quick, I do have a remote signature document that is actually my final tax return. That is the initial request. It is a copy of the tax return that you have actually sent them. So the document archive will save automatically the initial copy you sent to your taxpayer, and it will also send out a copy once you get the signature back. So you have both copies always within your document archive here. No need to print it for your preparer copy. It is stored for you within your archive. So once you do get your taxpayer signature back, you would go ahead and go to your next two steps. You may consider your invoice. Your invoice is where you can capture payment. I mean, not capture payment, sorry. Make sure your preparation charges are on your invoice, right? That's what you charge to do the tax return. So make sure you take a look at your invoice and you're putting in your prep charges there. And then we have printing and transmitting as the last two methods here. So I can print my final tax return by clicking on the print icon, go to final tax return and bank documents. Bank documents always do need to be printed before you can transmit. So when you click on that, it will show you a dialog box just like this. You'll have two options. You can print it to your printer, or you can email it to your taxpayer. Okay, so when I click email, which I think is great, it comes encrypted, right? So we're saving a copy and we're encrypting it to your taxpayer. So now you can see that they do have a PDF password. It is the first 4 letters of their last name and the last 4 of their social. And then you can email a copy and text a copy of that password to your taxpayer, and then just email the document to the taxpayer. Click OK. And now a copy of the final tax return, and you can do that for bank documents, is going out to my taxpayer, and I'll click Send Document. That is the whole methodology between gathering signatures and printing the tax return for you to send it to your taxpayer. Your very last step is transmit. Okay, you'll click on the transmit button here, and then it's going to go through verify. We're going to click next. And you can see that here you would hit transmit federal, and if you had a state, you would hit transmit state. If you're filing an extension, it's going to say transmit extension. Same thing for an amendment, transmit amendment throughout the season. Just make sure we're always selecting on the correct box. You may ask why it says submit for review. Well, I did this as a preparer. Not a lot of preparers transmit the tax returns directly to the IRS. So for me, I'm actually submitting my tax return for review. My office manager will go in and transmit it. So I'm going to hit submit for review. It's not the first option. It's not the only area they can. You don't even have to train your preparers to hit transmit. They can simply, once they verify the return and maybe they gather their signatures, they can actually hit on the down arrow and go to submit for review. Once it does that, they've finalized the return, and you, the office manager, you'll get notified on your tax returns tab that you have a tax return that's ready to review. So that was the whole process of our regular method of doing a tax return from beginning to end. So I just wanted to show that in its full entirety of even the preparer submitting for review. And now you take a note that this tax return for Loki was ready for review. It has the pending icon here, so it's pending remote signature. So once that comes through, it will show a completed status for the remote signature. You can also filter for those statuses here at the drop-down arrow. So this is another area you can filter for your tax returns. Now I just want to take a few minutes, and I just want to show you what that guided estimator was. So I'm going to again go ahead and put in a social. We won't go through the whole process, but just what the estimation methodology is. So for that type of return, I'll hit create guided estimator mode. And what it does is it breaks down the tax return into a few different categories for us. We have the sections over here on the left-hand side of contact, children / dependents, income, deductions, credits, states, and then your results page. But this is a little bit for the beginner, so you just may like a little easier of a flow. We have drop-down arrows, so that's like the new thing, right? So we have drop-down arrows and toggle switches, so maybe a little bit easier to learn when you're first going through the return. Okay, so I'm just going to skim through this. So if they have any of these applicable, you would just switch it on and leave it that way. We also have small little info tooltips here that can provide some additional information. Okay, since I did single, my spouse information is grayed out, and now you see a next button at the bottom. I'll go ahead and hit next, and now we're just going to fill in the address information here. Okay, for my state, you're going to choose the state here. Taxpayer information. Okay, do they receive text messages? Again, their email. And then we're again clicking next. And now you're seeing you're getting the green check marks here. So this is what I mean by adding in data versus filling out the complete form. So for my dependents, how much did they pay in daycare expenses? For how many children? Child tax credit, enter number of dependents under 17 with an SSN. Okay, so this is where you would enter in that information, and then what it does is at the end of this, it's going to build the forms for you. So again, W-2, what was just their wages and their withholdings? And if you want to add more W-2s, you click on add more. The income section has the different most popular sources of income. So we have W-2, 1099, unemployment, W-2G, household help, spouse, well, there was one, and then we have other income, right? So Schedule C, if I just wanted to put that in for a taxpayer or for the spouse, I can go ahead and add in some income there, and it's going to add those forms for me. Okay, so this is putting in the numeric data, and then you're going to go in and you're going to see these forms added, and now you're going to go ahead and finalize them. So we're on our adjustments page here, itemization if you wanted to force it, but we always do the standard. Any other credits that could be applicable for your taxpayer, you're going to just put in the amounts here. So I'm just going to put in some data so you could just see how it builds. I like this for states though. If you just want to add your state forms right away, I can declare which one is my resident state. So I can go ahead and say Georgia is my resident. And then I can go ahead and add in any other states that I may have worked in. So I can go ahead and choose South Carolina. We have some miscellaneous forms here if we just needed to go ahead and add my 1099 miscellaneous. And you can scroll through these and see we have all these forms listed. And now I'm at a results page. So the results page is looking at, okay, here's my total taxable income, credits of any taxes, and then my federal refund is looking about $2,800. And now you hit complete guided estimator mode. We do bring you into the estimator page here, where it kind of breaks down all the data that we entered in, but really look at our flow now. We are still in the same methodology that I just went over with our create regular return with our function buttons at the top now. We still have our refund amount at the top, and it even added Georgia, when we add some income there. But now we have our general section, right? We have our client data and all our forms here. And now we have our federal section, and it added the W-2. It added the Schedule C, the 1099, and my 2441 for childcare, and my 8879. So it built those returns for me, the return with the forms. And it also added in my Georgia resident form and my South Carolina non-resident form. So those forms are there. So it added all of my forms. And now I'll click back on my client data screen. Now, if I was a head of household, you add in the dependent information. You may go through and put their occupation there. But most of your information is now going to just go ahead and finalize the data for those forms, and you put in the EINs and all that basic data there. So the guided estimator mode, in a nutshell, it adds the forms for you, and then you go in and fill out the forms. So that was just a nice little recap of the estimator mode. And when I save and close this tax return, you're going to see that any returns started with that guided estimator mode actually have a little indicator that methodology was used. And that's by this little wizard icon, or wand I should say, that's listed for you right here. So that's how you can know a return was done that way. And also, as we are submitting returns right now, please take a notice of the down arrow that's listed for you right here by the taxpayer's return. You click on it and it's going to show you the federal refund amount, if there's a bank product, the bank status, and then the return status as well. So that information is quickly found upon right here on the down arrow for each tax return. And then I'm just going to go ahead and go into a return and show you one more thing that is called the information and status page. Just because I know that's a lot of questions going on. Anytime you want an update with your tax return after you have transmitted, this worksheet right here, the information and status, is extremely useful. This will show you the federal refund acknowledgement dates or reject, or if it was approved, acknowledged. Any update or status update is going to be listed for you here by federal, amendment, state, and financial product, meaning a bank product. So all of that information for you is listed right here. And again, that's the information, the status worksheet, where you can get the latest updates of your tax return after it's been transmitted. Okay, so with that, that shows you the complete methodology of doing a tax return, whether it's the forms-based, the regular return, or we use the guided estimator mode through our online software.